Okay, so I recently read an article about a local organization in my area that's looking to bring in an outside consultant to serve in an ombuds role. So, the ombuds role is going to be focused on employee workplace conflicts. And in that article, a board member asked a question that immediately stood out to me because it's one that I hear all the time. And that question was, why can't HR handle this? So, this is exactly what I want to talk to you about today. And if this is your first time watching one of my videos, my name is Letitia Newby. I'm the HR attorney behind Cultivate HR Consulting, and I help people understand the real work of HR because our work impacts real people, real careers, and real workplace cultures. Now, according to this article, the organization explained that they were seeking this outside ombuds because if an employee had an issue with their supervisor, they believe that going to HR means HR will support the supervisor and not the employee. And this is a narrative that I hear constantly about HR. And instead of dismissing it or getting defensive about it, I think it's important to actually unpack why this belief exists and what an ombud's role is designed to do differently. So, at the core, an ombud's role is a neutral, independent resource. Their role is to listen to concerns, to help people think through their options, to surface patterns or systemic issues, and to support resolution without being part of management or decision making. An ombuds does not represent the employee, they don't represent the organization, and they don't investigate or enforce policy. They provide a confidential space for employees to talk through concerns and figure out what's next. And that neutrality is a key distinction. And so HR is often described as not neutral, right? And I want to just take a quick moment to pause and talk about this because that framing is missing something very important. HR is intended to be a neutral support. HR supports the organization, and that means that it supports the people within it. That includes employees and leaders. And so this means that HR does the work of ensuring policies are applied consistently, protecting employee rights, helping managers think clearly and act fairly, and making sure decisions are ethical and legally sound. And here's the part that I think often gets missed. HR frequently does advocate for employees. That advocacy, though, doesn't always show up in the space where employees can see it. So, a lot of the work that HR does happens behind the scenes. HR is often challenging a leader's assumptions, pushing for objectivity, asking the hard questions, slowing down decisions that are moving very quickly, and redirecting behavior that isn't aligned with policies or fairness. However, those conversations usually happen directly with the supervisor or leadership, not in front of the employee. So, from the employee's perspective, it can feel like HR is siding with the supervisor, when in reality, HR may be doing significant advocacy work for the employee that they never actually see or even know about. And that gap between what HR is doing and what employees can observe is where this narrative comes from. So when employees says, something like HR supports the supervisor, what they're often reacting to is a lack of visibility, right, in HR's advocacy. That doesn't mean that HR isn't advocating. It means that HR's advocacy often happens quietly, strategically, and within constraints that aren't always visible to employees. So let's talk about the ombuds role a little bit. An ombuds serves a different purpose, right? An ombuds is not an advocate for outcomes. They are a confidential, neutral listening space, a place for employees to talk through concerns and sort through options without triggering a formal process or any decision making. And so, in that way, an ombuds can feel more supportive in the moment because there's no enforcement, there's no escalation, and there's no obligation to act. Now, that doesn't make HR less supportive. It actually means HR's role carries responsibilities that an ombuds role intentionally does not, right? An ombuds is not meant to replace HR. It complements HR by offering something that HR is not designed necessarily to be. So when an organization adds an ombuds role, it's usually not because HR has failed. It's because employees want a space to talk before things can become formal. Leaders want earlier visibility into those patterns, and the organization recognizes that not every concern needs to start in a compliance lane. And so often, HR is still very much tied to, very much connected to focus of compliance. Okay. And so, I think that the ombuds role fills a different need, right? I almost think like a therapist for employees, in that it is a space where employees can come, they can talk about what's happening. The ombuds can help them understand what some options are, and then that's the end of it. Nothing has to happen. The employee may go and do something with that, they may not. But usually, when you come to HR, depending on the seriousness, right, of what's happening, there is some actions or at least some conversations that HR may need to have after they have engaged with you. Not because the employee has done anything wrong, but maybe because there's something happening in the workplace that HR really needs to make sure and get some clarity around, understanding what's happening and how to prevent it or minimize any risks that may be associated with that. So, if this helped you better understand why organizations would even add an ombuds role and what that really means for HR, go ahead and hit that like button and follow me for more conversations about how HR actually works. As always, I'm Letitia Newby, the HR attorney behind Cultivate HR Consulting, and I will see you in the next one.